In this episode, I'm stunned by a sunset, we investigate a hole in the ground, and Sheila discovers the oldest picture gardens in the world. After our stay in Carragini, it was time for us to move on. The landscape of the Pilbara put on another show as it bade us goodbye. We drove up to the coast and stopped at 80 Mile Beach after the first day before driving on to Broome. Port Hedland has an industrial beauty, but 80 Mile Beach was on another level, and the sunset left me genuinely speechless. I'm not going to ruin the view with our camping corner graphic, but just know that the 80 Mile Beach Caravan Park scored 4.5 stars, but probably gets a bonus star for the setting. Just be aware that access to the park is via a 9-kilometre corrugated road off the Great Northern Highway. And then we were in Broome.
And here we are now in Broome. We've driven 1,000 kilometres from Carragini over the last couple of days. You do about 400 kilometres up to the coast, where you arrive at Port Hedland, the largest volume bulk port in the world. Handles 500 million tonnes of cargo. The vast majority of which is iron ore, which is dug out of the Western Australian desert and sent to Asia. But it's quite an impressive facility, not somewhere you particularly want to stay. It's not that picturesque, but impressive nevertheless. And then a 600 kilometre journey up the coast to Broome. Just a word of warning, anybody who wants to travel along that route, there are only 2 fuel stops in that 600 kilometres, so fill up whenever you can. We stayed at 80 Mile Beach, which was absolutely beautiful, and we're certainly seriously thinking of returning there for a short break. It's absolutely idyllic. We're now in Broome, and as you can see, the campsite is really it's really very attractive. It's shaded, secure, and we think that we're going to enjoy ourselves here.
Broome is a beautiful and fascinating place. Sitting at the very western end of the Kimberley, it's the regional capital with a population of around 15,000. It's also a popular tourist destination and has a very relaxed feel. In the town centre, there are a number of brass statues dotted around of some of the founding personalities, and the history of Broome is a fascinating cultural mashup of a true entrepot. The town centre is known as Chinatown, and while some of the original settlers were Chinese, a very strong early influence was actually from Japan. Various businesses sprang up in the 1880s to support the newly booming industry of pearl diving, and Japanese names are prominent. This completely integrated community was interred during World War II, especially when Broome came under Japanese air attack. And then we stumbled on a complete surprise.
So I'm standing outside the Sun Pictures building, which is basically the world's oldest operating picture gardens. It's an outdoor cinema. It was built originally in the early 1900s, 1913. Built at the turn of the century, and in 1913 converted into the picture gardens, and it has been running as such ever since. So it is National Trust Heritage listed. It's a pretty central place for Broome. Still operating today. I don't think we're going to be able to see anything, but it's fantastic.
Of course, Broome has the obligatory jetty that ran out into deep water to allow ocean-going ships to dock, as the local mangroves are a problem closer to shore. Just like Carnarvon and other places, the jetty has been damaged or destroyed by cyclones at various points, and what remains is a fraction of the original. And then we visited the local Japanese and Chinese cemeteries, which bear witness to the multicultural foundations of this lovely little community.
Okay, here we are, we're very near Broome, and we are at Ganthome Point, which is quite interesting in itself. It is made up of late Cretaceous rock, and there are apparently quite a lot of dinosaur footprints in and around this area, to the extent that this is actually an area of significant cultural significance for the local Yawuru tribe. So there are signs everywhere asking us to show suitable respect, and obviously we'll be doing that. Interestingly though, historically, in terms of European exploration, Ganthome Point was first surveyed by Europeans when, in 1801, a French expedition led by a guy called Baudin was sailing by, noticed this, thought it was an island, and so named it after a French admiral called Ganthome, and so it became Ganthome Island. It wasn't until later in the 1820s and the British came back, surveyed it properly and realised that it was actually attached to the mainland, so renamed it Ganthome Point. But interestingly, Baudin's expedition was of two ships called the Géographe and the Naturaliste. And the reason that that's got a connection with us is that right the way back down in the southwest, around the Dunsborough area where we live, the bay there is called Géographe Bay, and at the end of that bay, the promontory there is called Cape Naturaliste, and that was first mapped out by Baudin on that very same expedition. But there's another link to, I think it was our second episode when we were in Shark Bay, because one of the officers on Baudin's expedition was a guy called Louis de Freycinet, and Louis, when they got back to France, made a bit of a splash, publishing and selling charts and maps and so on that he'd made in the 1801 expedition, to the point where he was able to garner enough support for him to lead a further expedition in 1817. Now, he came on a single ship, the Uranie, and that was the expedition where they charted out a lot of Shark Bay, the Péron Peninsula, or Péron, the clue is in the French derivation, and also the Hamelin Pool, which of course is actually Hamelin, which is where you'll recall our old friends the stromatolites were based. Good stromatolite reference there. The really interesting thing about that expedition was that Louis de Freycinet slightly redesigned his ship, the Uranie, and made his personal cabin slightly bigger than was originally intended. And the excuse that he gave for this was that he was going to need this extra space to store scientific samples to bring back to France. But it turned out that when they left port, he'd actually brought his wife on board with him, Rose de Freycinet. They set off from France, I think it might have been Toulon that they left from, and went initially first to Rio, and then across the Atlantic, round the Cape of Good Hope, and across. They came up the western coast of Australia, did all of the mappings that we've been talking about here before heading off, I think, to New Caledonia, then down the east coast of Australia as far, I believe, as Sydney, before then heading off across the Pacific, around Cape Horn, and I think that they were shipwrecked near the Falklands. They then managed somehow to procure another boat. I think they bought something, got them to I think Buenos Aires, might have been Rio, but then from there they were able to get back to France. So they did get back with many of their samples and their scientific findings and so on. The reason it's important is that Rose de Freycinet kept a journal. She wrote a daily journal of this voyage, and she ended up becoming only the second woman to circumnavigate the Earth, and was the first person to circumnavigate the Earth whilst keeping a journal. And I believe that journal is now in the State Library in Sydney in New South Wales. So interesting little fun factoid of the way that all of these European exploratory efforts all fit together, and how that is connected with Gwanthone Point here in Broome.
And then it was a short drive round the bay to Cable Beach, so named because it was the point where the very first telegraph cable was laid that connected Australia to Singapore and ultimately the UK. In our days of WhatsApp video calls and instantaneous satellite communication, it's amazing to think there was a time when all of the information flow in and out of this entire continent came in the form of dots and dashes transmitted along a single cable that came ashore here. For our part, we just enjoyed watching the blood-red sun sink into the ocean as we sipped our cocktails and reflected on a few glorious days. We stayed at Cable Beach Caravan Park, which was a short walk from this wonderful cocktail bar. Like many places, the facilities were clean, if a little tired, but otherwise we couldn't fault it. So 4.5 out of 5 stars. And another sunset to die for. Then we were on the road again, heading east along the Great Northern Highway. We decided to steal an extra day in Broome and do 2 days travelling in one. We ditched our overnight stay in Fitzroy Crossing and did the 700k to Halls Creek in one day. That meant driving deep into the higher country of the eastern Kimberley, and what struck us the most was how green much of the landscape became. And then we arrived at the Kimberley Hotel. In the absence of any appropriate caravan parks, it was a basic but perfectly decent stopover that allowed us access to our next adventure. 150 kilometres south of Halls Creek is the Wolf Creek meteorite crater. That meant a nearly 300k round trip on unsealed roads, and there is definitely a knack to finding the best speed to minimise the bone-shaking vibrations. But after some judicious tyre pressure management and a couple of hours of acclimatising to the outback roads, we arrived at a hole in the ground. But not just any hole. This is the second biggest hole in the ground in the world.
Okay, so I'm standing here on the rim of the Wolf's Creek meteorite crater, which you'll be able to see behind me. We've driven from Halls Creek especially to see this meteorite crater. It is the second largest one in the world from which meteorite fragments have been recovered. It is 880-ish metres in diameter. The perimeter is about 3.4 kilometres. It was created somewhere between 300,000 and 120,000 years ago, when a meteorite, which was about 15 metres in diameter, weighing, how much did it weigh?
15,000 tonnes.
15,000 tonnes, hit the Earth. Now it created this meteorite crater, which now is only about 20 metres deep, but originally is thought that it would have created a crater which would have been about 150 metres deep. Over the centuries it's filled up with sand and so on. It's hypersaline, but no stromatolite. It's too young for that. So then you can see there's sort of a salty lake / salt flat in the middle there. And yeah, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. We're advised not to scramble down into the crater itself because there's no safe path. So we won't be doing that, but it is pretty amazing to think of how this was created in the middle of Australia all of those centuries ago. So on our way back from Wolf Creek crater, we thought we would pop into Old Halls Creek, and that's where we are now. It's basically a ghost town. It's been abandoned for quite a few years. I'd have to look up when it was abandoned, but it was abandoned because it was just not conveniently placed, really. It's on Little Creek. It's on Halls Creek, named so for Mr. Hall, who discovered the first and, as it turns out, only payable gold discovery in this part of Australia. We thought we would come and have a look at it. There's really very little here now. There's a couple of memorials, one to the original gold strike, and then about 10 years after that gold strike there was an expedition from Coolgardie, and that was remarkable in some way, and that was reproduced 100 years later by a small group of people, including 9 camels and a dog, and there's a memorial to that as well. Other than that, there's an old post office over there. That's all barred up now. That's the only building that still stands, and it looks like it's probably the most recently built building. And then down behind where Mark's standing, we can just see some old ruined buildings, which from the signs are an old butcher's shop. There's a cemetery here somewhere. It's all pretty overgrown though, so it really is a ghost town. Old Halls Creek is also the site of the event which triggered the development of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. The tragedy of Jimmy Darcy unfolded as follows. In July 1917, 21-year-old stockman Jimmy suffered severe internal injuries when his horse fell during a cattle stampede at nearby Ruby Plains Station. His friends transported him on a bumpy, springless cart for over 12 hours to reach Halls Creek, 80 kilometres away. There was no doctor in the region. The local postmaster, Fred Tuckett, only had a first aid certificate. Under desperate circumstances, Tuckett performed major bladder surgery on Jimmy Darcy using a pocket knife and morphine. He was guided step by step via Morse code telegraph by Dr. Joe Holland, who was 2,800 kilometres away in Perth. The remote operation was successful, but Darcy contracted malaria and remained critically ill. On hearing this, Dr. Holland immediately rushed from Perth to assist. This took the form of a gruelling journey over a week by cattle ship to Derby, followed by 6 days across rough tracks in a makeshift Model T Ford. The car broke down 40 kilometres outside of town, so Dr. Holland walked and rode a horse through the night, arriving at dawn only to find that poor Jimmy had died just hours earlier. The Reverend John Flynn, head of the Presbyterian Church's Australian Inland Mission, followed Darcy's widely publicised fight for life with great sorrow. Darcy's death became the definitive proof Flynn needed to argue that the outback required an aviation-based medical service. Spurred by this tragedy, Flynn teamed up with engineers and pilots to launch the world's first comprehensive air ambulance service, the AIM Aerial Medical Service, which later was named the RFDS, in 1928.
Here we are on Sunday morning. We're just about to leave Halls Creek. We've been staying at the Kimberley Hotel. We had heard a number of sorry tales about Halls Creek, lots of warnings about watching yourself, looking after your personal belongings, etc, etc. I have to say we've had 2 nights here, and it's a 3-star hotel. It's basic, but it's clean and dry and reasonably well appointed. But more importantly, the whole of the hotel compound sits behind a security fence, and they've been perfectly happy for us to park the caravan here in what is an enormous car park. There's probably a couple of hectares of car parking out the back as well, so a perfect stop for us. We've felt completely safe. There's been absolutely no problem at all. We're heading off to Warman this morning, and we've had a thoroughly nice time. We got here on Friday evening, and quite a lot of the town were in the hotel bar. There was a great mix, really nice feel to it all. We had a lovely time. The food was excellent, absolutely excellent, and we ate in there last night as well. It was a little bit quieter. Friday night is obviously the night to be in town in Halls Creek, but we've had a lovely little stay here. Obviously yesterday we went down to Wolf Creek Crater, so that was the reason for staying here, and today we move on to Warman. But we've had a lovely time here, and whilst it doesn't fit into our camping corner scoring, if you need a stop in the Halls Creek area, then you could do an awful lot worse than the Kimberley Hotel.
And then we were on the road again, heading into the deepest East Kimberley, and our dates with Pernalulu, Kununurra and much, much more. Join us next week when we'll be exploring cattle country, submerged lands, and the stunning beauty of the real top end.